Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats. The event is about to begin.
Are we ready to get it started? Yes, thank you so much for the energy. Thank you. It's going to be a fantastic day. Welcome to the United Nations headquarters for Youth Action Day. Make some noise. We have so many incredible young people joining us today, and online as well, from so many countries. I want to give a big shout out to our UN Web TV family. My name is Florence Ifeoluwa-Otedola, but you can call me Kapi. I'm repping a country called Nigeria, in case you've heard of it. Now, I'm a DJ, philanthropist, but also your moderator, but it feels like I'm more your co-host because today is all about you. It's all about the youth. And I am so honored to be taking you on this journey today. And as they say in my language, Yoruba, Ekabo. Welcome, everyone. Energy. Now, someone once told me, it's not about your what, but it's about your why. So why are we here? We believe that youth need to be able to take action. We believe in leadership that brings everyone to the table. And that's why I'm just so proud to be here. My favorite SDG is definitely 4. opportunity for everyone to get quality education. And at my foundation, the Copy Foundation, I'm so proud because we provide hardship funds for African students. So throughout today, this opening ceremony, I'd love you to get involved in the conversation, especially youth. What's your favorite SDG? What do you have to say? What do you believe in? So make sure you use hashtag, of course, Youth Lead, and also hashtag Our Common Future. And don't forget to get involved because everything here has been specially curated for the youth at UN Youth Affairs. And don't forget to make sure you have your say. So, today is going to be amazing. It's going to be full of energy. And like I said, I'm a DJ, so I like crowd involvement. So I do something called a copy crowd check. So when I say youth, I want you to say action. Should we give it a go? Youth? Action. Youth? Action. Yes, we got it right. Yes, give it up for yourselves. So, without further ado, I am so ecstatic to be taking you on this journey, of course, with the UN Youth Affairs Office and its partners. We are going to kick off with a special guest. I'm so excited to welcome Keisha Talking Waters de Vries. She's going to kick off this day with a traditional land acknowledgement. Keisha is the founding director of Sovereign Science, an indigenous-led community think tank. And she's all about promoting a deep connection with nature and pushing for indigenous rights. Now, over to you, Keisha.
Wulu Wapan, Kulamasi, good morning. My name is Keisha de Vries Lawrence. I'm Rampo Lenape Deer and Wolf Clan. I'm the Indigenous Education Specialist at Harvard Forest. I'm one of the inaugural Tribal Research Fellows at the John Carter Brown University Library, and I'm the founding director of the Indigenous Political Theory and Traditional Ecological Knowledge think tank, Sovereign Science. Alongside me today is my mother, chemist, educator, and twice awarded Indigenous Fulbright Scholar, Dr. Maria Lawrence, who I'm eternally grateful for. My speech today is to address the eastern woodlands of Turtle Island and the many through lines of interconnection that exist for the legacy of indigeneity globally and the infamy of colonization and imperialism internationally. The eastern woodlands is the vast land and waterscapes east of the Great Plains and below the mighty Arctic, and is the intricate cradleboard of the Haudenosaunee, the Nanticoke Lenni Lenape, the Wabanaki, the Micmac, the Wampanoag, the Nipmuc, the Massachusetts, the Nahagansett, the Pequot, the Mohegan, the Munsee, the Paugussett, the Scaticoke, the Ramapo, the Shinnecock, the Montaukett, the Lumbee, the Shawnee, the Rappahannock, the Cherokee, the Seminole, the now 6 nations of the Grand River, the Anishinaabe, the Piscataway, and many other communities that call the land and waters of the first sunrise their home of origin, including our many Caribbean relatives. Although plagued by diasporic mechanisms, pervasive racism, and intrusively predatory colonial tactics, we remain abundant in timeless remedies prescribed by the Creator, filled by our kinships to Mother Earth, and taken in collective community strides, uniting us from past to present and into future generations unknown. 2024 marks 400 years since the Dutch invasion of the Lenape-Hoking territory. Traditional Umami, Munsee, and Algonquin dialects of lands, commonly referred to as New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, Delaware, Pennsylvania, and pockets of others such as Massachusetts and Ohio. As Eastern Woodlands Indigenous peoples, we have codified our Akwini, our peace, since time immemorial because it has always been dependent on Aki, the earth. The Digital Compact does not include enough vernacular around indigeneity, thus appearing to erase future protections and innovations of indigenous communities and the larger pathways of a sustainable future, while also limiting indigenous peoples from a future associated with digital advancements. To appreciate the magnitude of this oversight, one must understand the quantum infinity that is indigenous ingenuity, from genetics to culinary, governance to forestry, traditional carbon sequestration to pragmatic geology. There is no rubric for the psyche of indigenous peoples, places, or our relatives. Understanding that some of the antecedents to this reasoning are the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples and the most recent report from the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, there is a spectra to the multifaceted work of restoration and preservation ahead of all of us. It is truly remarkable that at the 79th United Nations General Assembly, there is retroactively progressive changes in protocols and content happening. I pray this good medicine is continuously planted and nurtured in every version of the future we are all setting off to caretake. I would be remiss if I didn't take this opportunity to publicly thank the many elders here and gone that have led bravely in these spaces. Thank you to all those involved for organizing this week, including those who invited me, the Honorable Secretary General, the Undersecretary General for Policy, the Major Group for Children and Youth, and all of your phenomenal colleagues. Anushik Katabatash, Sego Niawe, Wanishi Kishkulamankwe, Wakamanitu. Thank you, Creator.
Wow. Thank you so much, Keisha, for that profound start, respect and recognition. And you know, earlier on I mentioned it's not just about our what, it's about our why. So it's only right that we watch through the official video for the Summit of the Future so that we actually understand what is at stake here and understand why youth action is so important. After the epic video, I'm so excited, we have an epic guest. After that, will be on stage our guest, who is the youngest ever senior appointment in the history of the United Nations, and the head of the newly established United Nations Youth Office. Alongside the Summit of the Future video, please welcome to the stage our first ever Assistant Secretary General for Youth Affairs, Philippe Pollier.
Change. It defines our world. Adapting, renewing, redefining, and transforming. But today, the escalating pace of change is pushing our interconnected world to its limits. We cannot keep up with the challenges of today or harness the opportunities of tomorrow with systems built for yesterday. We are at a pivotal moment in history. The choices we make today will have an exponential impact on current and future generations. This is our once-in-a-generation opportunity to come together as one world, to make tough choices, overcome conflict and chaos, and create a future worth striving for, a future worth living for. When countries work together, we can pave the way for global peace and prosperity, restore our planet, promote digital transformation, and protect human rights. But we must act now, as one world, to pave the way for our common future, for the benefit of all.
Good afternoon. How are you doing? That's good. That's what we expect from this day and from the audience. So, dear colleagues, delegates, fellow youth, I am so excited to join you today and to officially celebrate the opening of the Action Days of the Summit of the Future. Today, I carry with an immense privilege and a deep sense of responsibility as I deliver a message of hope, of recognition, and a call to action as the first United Nations Assistant Secretary General for Youth Affairs. More than 1,600 young people registered for the Action Days, and thousands more are joining us remotely. So this is exceptional, you know? But at the same time, I want to recognize the barriers that many young people constantly face when trying to participate in these spaces. Visa barriers, language barriers, financial barriers. So to all of them, we hear you, We see you and we recognize you today also in this conference room. I stand here filled with pride, with satisfaction, and a duty to acknowledge the path that brought us here. Allow me to take a moment to recognize those who have planted the seeds along the way. First and foremost, the young people who tirelessly have been advocating and striving for a world that is more just, more diverse, and equal. I also wish to extend my heartfelt gratitude to the former Secretary General's Envoy on Youth, Ahmad and Jayadma, who both took essential steps shedding light on youth issues and that had long before issues that were invisible and relegated. And let me also recognize the support and the conviction of our leadership. Thank you, Secretary General Antonio Guterres, and thank you, Deputy Secretary General Amina Mohammed, who is in the room with us now, for being big champions of this agenda and being part of the Youth Action Days as true allies. The establishment of the United Nations Youth Office as a specialized mechanism for youth affairs in the United Nations Secretariat is the biggest testament of this journey. Backed by strong political support from member states, it is a significant shift in our commitment on youth issues. And today, we are here at the UN General Assembly, just a few hours before the starting point of a critical intergovernmental process for the future of global governance. The Summit of the Future is a once-in-a-generation opportunity to reshape multilateral system and to put young people at the center of multilateral system. Over the past year, our office has worked closely with young people around the world to advocate for concrete commitments at this summit, hoping to make meaningful youth engagement the norm. Queridos jóvenes y colegas,
Esteemed young people and colleagues, 10 years ago, a day like today would have been unimaginable. A day on the official program of the United Nations dedicated to youth, a day when young people are truly at the forefront of discussions, of thinking and proposals. A day when this House recognizes that any agenda, whether it's gender, climate, peace and security, sustainable development or human rights, has the youth agenda as a cross-cutting element of it. But despite this progress, our world is at a critical juncture. We are witnessing the highest number of conflicts since the Second World War, and these conflicts disproportionately affect young people all over the world. From Gaza to Ukraine, through Sudan to Myanmar, conflict-related deaths have reached a 28-year high. With 1 in 4 young people globally living in conflict-affected countries, these tensions directly impact their lives and their livelihoods. At the same time, mistrust between young people and institutions continues to worsen. And this is leading to exacerbating inequalities and increasing instability. As a global system and community, we have failed to build that world that we promised so many times. Excuses for failing to end the climate tragedy, wars, forced displacements, and ultimately for lost generations are running in short supply. The fact that we are gathered here today, young people from all over the world, representatives, heads of state, representatives of civil society, academia, public and private sectors, we are precisely here so that we can break from this trend and take action. On Sunday, the Summit of the Future opens, and I'm hopeful and confident that these action days will bring about the positive transformation we need. That is the intent behind these 2 days that we inaugurate today.
colleagues, the Pact for the Future, with member states, with governments, concrete commitments, it offers an opportunity to build the future we want. It is our joint responsibility to put these actions into practice. Although young people remain the generation with the most confidence in the multilateral system, we run the risk of losing them as partners if we don't make this pact a reality. So I truly hope that these action days will spark actions and commitments and foster a renewed sense of solidarity, of collaboration, of trust, and of community. Thank you. Muchísimas gracias.
Thank you so much to our Assistant Secretary General for Youth Affairs. And what he said was so true. We have come a long way, but we have to make sure we still go the further distance required. As we are now warmed up, I think we are ready for some speakers. And youth voices require good listeners to hear them out. So it is time to hear from some pretty good listeners. I am so honored to introduce our first speaker, who is no stranger to empowering youth. The president of Cabo Verde is not only dedicated to leadership, but is also an author. Outside of serving his country, His Excellency Jose Maria Neves has authored several books, including A Future to Build. As an African personally, I am so inspired when I see innovative leadership styles. So please join me in welcoming the President of Cabo Verde to stage, His Excellency Jose Maria Neves.
Madam Deputy Secretary General, Assistant Secretary General for Youth Affairs, representatives of member states, civil society, private sector, academia, local and regional authorities, youth representatives, their youth. Ladies and gentlemen, my first words are to say that I'm truly honored to be here to address the youth of the world and the geocultural diversity and aspirations they represent. It is the satisfaction of someone who represents a previous generation and who today holds government responsibilities and is communicating with the young people of today while also thinking about future generations. We are gathered here over the next few years for the Summit of the Future, and I want to commend the UN Secretary General for proposing this vital initiative under our common agenda to seal in a pact for the future a shared vision as well as urgent and decisive actions necessary to tackle the pressing current and emerging challenges impacting the world globally, especially those living in vulnerable situations, many of whom are youth. That is why the youth are at the forefront of our objectives, and as such must be an integral part of the solutions we pursue as driving forces for leadership, change, and action. Empowering the youth becomes not just a priority, it is an urgent necessity for all actors, both state and non-state actors. Here are 4 critical areas we view as essential. First accelerating the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals in an inclusive manner, ensuring no youth is left behind in the fight against poverty and climate change, in access to health care, quality education, training and employment, alongside measures to alleviate the pressures to forced migration. In short, in the economic, technological, and social empowerment of the youth. Second, promoting peace and security by placing youth at the center of development efforts in opposition to wars, conflict, and social instability, which rob them of opportunities for their spiritual and material growth, and extinguish their hope and destroy their futures. Third, science, technology, and innovation and digital cooperation are areas where youth can thrive by excellence. Thus, we must work at both international and national levels to ensure young people have access to these critical resources, using them as levers for transformation and for their progress and well-being. Fourth, it is essential to enhance young people's participation in global and national governance toward their empowerment. International organizations must open their doors wider for the statutory recruitment of youth and encourage their involvement in various volunteer opportunities. At the national level, engaging youth in political, cultural, and social spheres is crucial for nurturing learning and exercising leadership. My country, Cabo Verde, is a small island developing state. Above all, Cabo Verde is a nation with over 500 years of history and a country that will celebrate 50 years of independence in 2025. It is a representative democracy committed to upholding human rights, particularly those of young people who make up the majority of our resident population. Through government initiatives and collaboration with civil society organizations, young people are active contributors to the solutions we advocate for in sustainable development, economic and social inclusion, peace and stability, both locally and globally. This summit is unique and will be remembered as the Youth Summit, focused on the youth, by the youth, and for the youth, and it will open a new and more inclusive chapter in multilateralism. I wish you all fruitful action days and an excellent journey towards the future. Thank you very much for your attention.
Wow. Thank you so much, Your Excellency, Jose Maria Neves. Brigada, for being such an example in highlighting the importance and meaningfulness of youth engagement. As we know, it is Youth Action Day, so I want to do another copy crowd check. Are you with me? More energy, come on! It's not every day. So, when I say youth, you say action, youth. Youth. Yes. So, we are ready for not even one, but two incredible speakers. Terry is all about creating a world of justice, peace, and good governance. And Arij has been fighting for children's rights in Yemen, especially their access to education. Talk about some serious goals. Terry and Arij, the stage is yours. Give it up for them. Ujana ni moshi, a Swahili saying that speaks to the undeniable truth that we are all once adolescents, transitioned into young adults, and will ultimately take the journey to full adulthood. This progression happens so swiftly that it often feels like blinking, missing one phase for the other. Yet, every stage leaves a significant mark on the next, shaping who and what becomes of us. My journey as a youth advocate started 10 years ago in Kenya, where I was born and raised. And being here today is proof that the UN is open and accessible to young people. I have experienced this openness firsthand without needing any special connections. I have grown from a grassroots youth advocate to a global youth leader and now a youth engagement facilitator. I am grateful to Kenya for the world-class education and the provision of information and communication technology, ICT, to her citizens, which has empowered an ordinary girl from rural central Kenya to actualize her youthful vision. Looking back, we see this same dynamic mirrored in the journey of youth advocacy in the United Nations. From the formation of the major groups of children and youth in 1992, to the appointment of the UN Youth Envoy, and now the establishment of the UN Youth Office. Each step in this journey has been a chain reaction where the rhythm of youth involvement only intensifies as we move forward. Today, as the action days for Summit of the Future commence, we are standing on the threshold of future filled with the hope and as we eagerly await to witness another historic moment through the pact of the future. Youth at the UN have been instrumental in shaping the landscape during the preparatory process for Summit of the Future. The persistent advocacy efforts youths have successfully pushed for vital reforms in the language and the structure of the key outcomes policy framework, the Pact of the Future, the Global Digital Compact, and the Declaration on Future Generations. Capacity building has been a core pillar on youth-led and focused entities at the UN, with the efforts aimed at empowering young people with the skills and knowledge necessary to advocate for their future. From 2022 to 2024, young people have engaged in numerous consultations that have empowered us to raise concerns over the challenges of implementing the SDGs at the grassroots level. These consultations were complemented by training sessions that we call the Youth Blast, designed to equip youth with the necessary tools to influence decision-making and policy processes. The youth-led and focused entities at the UN have also produced numerous position papers and reports that have provided invaluable insights into the needs and aspirations of young people. The Youth Voices report, produced at the 2024 ECOSOC Youth Forum, consolidated youth perspectives that were further disseminated in Nairobi during the 2024 UN Civil Society Conference, where the major groups for children and youth partners supported the registration and participation of 500 plus youths, where we also had the opportunity to present our recommendations to the co-facilitators of the Pact and the two annexes. By constantly engaging in outreach and ensuring that young people are aware of opportunities to participate, thousands of youths have been able to contribute to the global agenda and shape our future. Now, we are writing the next chapter.
I once saw a photo of a child from Yemen, small, fragile, and innocent, standing amid the ruins of what used to be his home. His eyes were empty and hollow. Not because he lacked food or shelter, but because he lost that one thing every child needs: hope. This photo, taken during the ongoing conflict in my home country, Yemen, is something I cannot forget. Today, I stand before you not just as a voice for youth and children in Yemen, but as a voice for every child in the world whose future rests in our hands. In the next 30 years, 4.2 children will be born into a world shaped by the choices we make today. What we do now will shape their world, whether that world is defined by conflict, poverty, and fear, or by hope, security, and opportunity. We must ask ourselves, are we ready to take action so that every child can flourish? Today's children deserve more than survival. They deserve to thrive in a life filled with joy, curiosity, and dreams, free from violence and discrimination. When we look into their eyes, we see the future. But that future depends on us, on what we do today. It's often said that this generation will determine whether the next inherits a world filled with challenges or solutions. And I believe this generation can and will be the reason for the happiness of the next. But that future needs our unwavering dedication, our resources, and our collective will to act now. Imagine a world where the faces of children, like those we see in Yemen, are not marked by fear, but by joy. I urge you to help make that world a reality. Together, we can ensure that when we look back, the images of these children will be filled with happiness, safety, and opportunity. Let's make sure it's a future every child can believe in.
Dear Ridge, what are your hopes and dreams for children and youth?
My hopes and dreams for children are that they live in a world where they don't just survive, but thrive, where their dreams are nurtured and their futures are full of possibility. So I have a question to the audience here. Will we let another generation slip through the cracks, or will we take decisive action? What about you, Terry? What are your dreams for children and youth around the world?
My hopes and dreams is that children and youth are empowered with the knowledge, resources, and opportunities to actively shape just, equitable, and sustainable planet for themselves and for the future generations. We are the present.
We are the future.
The moment to act is now.
Thank you so much.
Wow. Thank you so much. Terry and Arij came with so much energy. That was really heartfelt. And keeping things fresh, the next speaker is a political young leader himself. So he understands firsthand the impact and importance of empowering young people. More young people to participate in political affairs. Dan Carden from the UK, United Kingdom, has been a Labour MP for Liverpool Walton since 2017. He is also the president of the board of the Forum of Young Parliamentarians of the Interparliamentary Union. It's quite a mouthful. Please give a Youth Action warm welcome to Dan Carden.
Dear colleagues, young delegates, it is truly a privilege to stand here before you, not just as a Member of Parliament in the United Kingdom for the great city of Liverpool, and not just as the President of Young Parliamentarians at the IPU, but as part of a generation confronting a world that feels more fragile and unstable than it has for decades. As old uncertainties wither and decay, we must face up to unprecedented global crises. Climate change threatens a future in which vast swathes of our planet may become uninhabitable. Economic models have concentrated power and wealth in the hands of a few, and the instruments of war are far outpacing the instruments of peace. These crises didn't materialize out of thin air. Decisions we have made, actions we have taken, and cold political calculations that we have indulged have saddled us with this heavy burden. But if these problems stem from human action. So too must their solutions. Because it is not providence that bends the arc of history towards justice, but the force of our collective resolve that must drag it in the right direction. And as a simple matter of chronological necessity, it is young people who will have to take on this task. And it's for this reason that the IPU has endeavoured to ensure that young people are given a seat at the table. And we saw these efforts just last week as our global conference of young parliamentarians, where young MPs from around the world came together to make a positive case for the future. Here, we coordinated actions to ensure that no matter the crisis or the setting, young people are still provided with quality education and decent employment. At the conference, we united in the belief that we cannot allow the challenges we face to drown our hopes for a better future. And this Summit of the Future is a critical opportunity to rise up to these challenges together. This is not simply a gathering of leaders, but an opportunity to envision a different world. And there are two essential points I would like to share with you today. The first is that parliaments are allies in translating this summit's aspirations into actions. Whether it is writing the laws that will guide them or holding governments to account, parliaments are needed. And the second point is that parliaments need to continually evolve to meet the pace of today's challenges. And the strongest motors for this rejuvenation are young MPs. So we need more of us in positions of power. And we still have a lot of work to do, because despite more than half the world's population being under the age of 30, only 2.8% of members of Parliament are under 30. And that's why young MPs are championing things like youth quotas, lowering the age of eligibility to run for office, having more youth committees and caucuses in parliaments, and empowering young parliamentarians into leadership positions and mentoring young aspirants. Ladies and gentlemen, the Summit of the Future is more than just a meeting. It is an anchor point for our aspirations and our efforts. And on this journey, you can count on the engagement of parliaments and especially of young MPs. Good luck. Thank you.
Thank you so much for those words. We definitely need more instruments of peace. And also thank you for reminding us, Dan, that anything is truly possible. Maybe I could be the first female president of Nigeria, who knows? But sometimes all we need is a bit of hope. And I feel so much hope is in this room. And actually, I know someone that has plenty of hope, a friend of mine, and I think you all might know her. And she is so full of it. She's one of the most kawaii, well-known characters in the world. She's from Japan, and she has been working so hard to raise awareness on all the sustainable development goals, not just in Japan, but around the world. And I've told her to help us out today. So let's see if I can reach her. I've been trying to find her. I'm not sure. Oh, she's here. Oh.
Hello, everyone.
Hi.
Do you know who I am?
Do you know her?
Can you call out my name for me?
Who knows her? Hello, Kitty. Give it up for her.
Thanks so much, everyone. Once again, I'm Hello Kitty. I'm really happy to have the chance to speak with you all today. But to be honest, I'm a little nervous too.
Aww.
Yet, when I hear all of your voices supporting me like this, it gives me the confidence that I can do my best. Your voices inspire me. But it's not just me. I believe they can change the world for the better. What kind of world would you like to live in? For me, it's a world where everyone gets along and lives in harmony. That's why I want to hear your voices, the voices of today's generation, who remind us that a better world is possible. Where you were born, your gender or age, we're all different. And that means what we see, what we don't see, and what we feel are probably different too. Does that mean we can't understand each other? Not at all. I believe that by respecting each other's differences and having heart-to-heart discussions, we can create a better future together. What really matters is that each one of us keeps pushing for change in our everyday lives. You've got your own unique way of tackling the challenges in front of you. And together we can find the best way to overcome them. Even a tiny idea that seems small to you might be innovative and new to someone else. When all those ideas come together, they can build something big. And by bringing all of your creative ideas and solutions together, this will surely contribute to achieving the global goals. So, you know what? Let's hear more and more from everyone. I believe that if we all come together across generations and take action for the future, we can create a world that is better for everyone. I hope today is only one of many chances for all your ideas to turn into action. I look forward to seeing you again in a world where all of you are leading the way to an even better future. See you!
Bye! Give it up for Hello Kitty! Thank you, bye! I will call you back later. How cool was that? I think it's just a representation of how we can all get together and make change. And I love the fact that since 2019, Hello Kitty, alongside the United Nations and Sanrio, have been working so hard on Hello Global Goals. Talking about getting together, I have the personal pleasure of presenting a very special segment. In August this year, to celebrate International Youth Day, the United Nations Youth Office partnered with the SDG Action Campaign and HUG, which is a global community for artists and a way for artists to communicate. The opportunity was to invite young people to submit some artwork so they could reimagine the world. And today, I have the pleasure to present to you the winning pieces. Art has been so important and always been a way to express oneself when words aren't enough. So today we are celebrating these pieces of art as a force for young people to get together. And all these pieces we're about to see are not just dreams. They are bold statements. They are not just about hope, but they are making moves. So without further ado, I give you Hope in Action. Thank you and congratulations. We would love to thank all the artists behind Hope in Action. And of course, a big thank you to the UN SDG Action Campaign and HUG for bringing us hope. And I hope you are all feeling as hopeful as I'm feeling now. And hope has suddenly arrived. It's a great time. And talking about arriving all the way from India, we have an amazing youth champion here with us today to wrap things up. UNDP's India Youth Champion, Sanjana Sanji, started her journey of giving back to underprivileged children in India. Through her work and hard advocate youth-led development, she's here to drop some serious inspiration. Give it up for Sanjana Sangi.
Esteemed guests and distinguished leaders, I first will just take a moment to pinch myself because this moment feels every bit surreal. But I, Sanjana Sanghi, Youth Champion for the UNDP, stand here before you immersed in profound gratitude, as it is one of my life's greatest honors to have been entrusted by the United Nations to represent the voice of the youth. As a young girl growing up in India, I remember that it was moments like these that used to leave me overwhelmed with both awe and inspiration as I would see my idols and role models do their earnest best in guiding the way our future should unfold. They would look us in the eye, whether it was through television screens or other media, and remind us that we are the future, that our decisions, actions, opinions, and in general everything we feel will be pivotal in shaping the way the future unfolds. It is important that we grow up to be conscious citizens of the world, hopeful yet realistic, passionate yet rooted, vulnerable yet resolute. That is a tall order to live up to. In our world today, where death and disease are spreading every day, where we find ourselves in the midst of a climate emergency, where armed conflict is waging havoc in different parts of the world, we, the youth, are trying to do our very best to keep our feet and ears rooted firmly to the ground, while our vision and hope soars for the stars. We are doing our best to not let any kind of cynicism, negativity, or inaction overtake us. That is a tall order to live up to. As I stand here before you today, opening the Summit of the Future Action Days, I stand here representing young people from different parts of the world and sharing our collective hopes and aspirations. I stand here on behalf of the biggest youth generation in the history of time. While 50% of the world is under 30 years of age, less than 3% of national parliamentarians belong to that age group. That is something to think about, because if we are not involved in the decisions that will shape both our present and our future, then we aren't setting ourselves up for too much success. If we are not the architects of our own future and the mere inheritors of it, we're not setting ourselves up for success. While the gap between the rich and the poor continues to widen, the challenges that surround us continue to deepen. And as young people, while we're facing our own challenges of the right to a quality education, gainful employment, and maintaining our own personal, mental, and physical well-being, I know that we're also willing to fight the bigger fights. I know that we don't want to sit on the sidelines of the decisions that will guide the future that we dream of for ourselves and for our children, and let that remain a pipe dream. And that is why it is organizations like the United Nations that carry out this formidable task of bringing member nations together to work towards solutions to resolve humanity's biggest challenges. And that is why our trust in its various arms, like the United Nations Development Programme, where I serve as youth champion in India, is critical, because the solutions that we all work towards together today are going to have a positive and lasting impact on both our today and our tomorrow. As Mahatma Gandhi famously said, "Be the change that you wish to see in this world." All we ask is for a seat at the tables of change. All we ask is to be given genuine opportunities of engagement, whether it is in the private sector, in the government, at the United Nations, or in academia. All we ask is for our voices to be heard, because we matter and our voice matters. All we ask is to be given the opportunity to be the change that we wish to see in this world. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sanjana, for that. It has been such an amazing journey today. All the speakers have taken us and given us so much to think about. You know, I feel so inspired, and it feels like Youth Action Day is now in full swing. So, there's so much for us to do today as we get into all the conversations. I have not forgotten about my UN Web TV family locked in who are joining the conversation. Don't forget, we want to hear what you have to say. So make sure you use hashtag Youth Lead and Our Common Future. And don't forget to @ the UN Youth Affairs. It's been so exciting, and we have so much more to come. We are getting ready. It's going to be fun. And I want to make sure that my crowd are still with me. Do you remember the copy crowd check? Yes? So when I say youth, you say? Youth. Youth. Yes, you are still with me, which is great. We have a super exciting segment coming up. Our very own United Nations Secretary General is going to join us for some real talk, a real conversation with young people as we approach, of course, the summit of the future. And he's here to listen to the priorities for the pact, for the future negotiations, and hear what young people want to get out of the coming summit ahead. It has been such a pleasure to be with you all, and I really hope everyone joins in on the conversation. And there will be indeed a Youth Action Day closing ceremony where I will be DJing, so that is something to look forward to as well. And I feel like this is really going to be a great day for all of us. It has been already quite profound. The speakers have really given us so much. So soon I will hand it over to our next moderator, who will take us on a journey, and we are going to engage even more with young people. So again, please join the conversation online using hashtag YouthLeads and hashtag Our Common Future. It has been such a pleasure. As they say in my language, Yoruba, Odabo. Thank you so much, and get ready for the next segment.
Change. It defines our world. Adapting, renewing, redefining, and transforming. But today, the escalating pace of change is pushing our interconnected world to its limits. We cannot keep up with the challenges of today or harness the opportunities of tomorrow with systems built for yesterday. We are at a pivotal moment in history. The choices we make today will have an exponential impact on current and future generations. This is our once-in-a-generation opportunity to come together as one world, to make tough choices, overcome conflict and chaos, and create a future worth striving for, a future worth living for. When countries work together, we can pave the way for global peace and prosperity, restore our planet, promote digital transformation, and protect human rights. But we must act now, as one world, to pave the way for our common future, for the benefit of all.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me? Yes? Okay, cool. Thank you so much for being here today. Everyone in the room, thank you for coming. And for those who are joining us online as well, thank you so much for joining. And for those who planned on being here and couldn't come, thank you so much also. So, I must say, I had the privilege to facilitate many discussions in the previous years, but this one feels a little bit different, especially given the current state of the world. I mean, we're seeing armed conflicts, we're seeing wars, we're seeing record high of displacements, record high of temperatures, heat waves across the world, climate crisis, natural crisis, lots of crises. But then I must also say, sometimes it seems that the consequences of what we're seeing in terms of challenges are not felt equally around the world, if I must say. to use a metaphor, sometimes it feels that, there are parts of the world where people are relatively having a comfortable, safe lives, and other parts of the world where people are struggling. And maybe a more explicit metaphor, personally for me, sometimes, I wake up in the morning and I look at the world and I feel like some parts of the world really feels like a Barbie house, while other parts of the world feels like the real Hunger Games. And then we have the UN, right? Our primary global organization, global leader, that seems a little bit stuck, maybe not. There is many young people around the world who maybe think that the UN is not fit for purpose. After all, it was established in 1945. But there are also many people around the world who support the UN, believe in the mission of unity, and many of these people are here today, are joining us online as well. So all of this is to say, and I personally do believe that the UN have an important role to play as a global leader in this world, in tackling challenges, in finding solutions, and in leading all of us to really come together. So to do that, I would really want us to have an honest and frank conversation. I know the title of this session is Dialogue, but what a dialogue really means is a conversation among equals, right? A conversation among people who believes and have shared values and have a shared vision. So I would ask everyone, us here on stage, but also everyone in the room, everyone online, for an hour or two, a day or two, or for the rest of our lives, to put our titles a little bit aside, our affiliations a little bit aside, and let's come together and have a conversation as individuals and as we, the people. Because you know what I really find fascinating? This is the Charter of the United Nations, right? And in the preamble of the Charter, I find it fascinating that it says, "We, the peoples of the United Nations." And I think this says it all. We, the people of the United Nations, have determined, and today the people also are coming together to determine. So if you all agree that this is going to be a honest, frank conversation, again, not only among us, but with everyone in the room, and a conversation that should continue, then I would want to hear a yes. So do we agree on that? Honest, frank conversation?
Yes.
Yes. What about you? Okay, everyone is excited. And to kick off this honest and frank conversation, we have an incredible group of people here. We have Daphne, who is a disability and a climate justice organizer. Thank you so much for joining us. We have the United Nations Secretary General. Thank you so much for joining us. And we have Caleb, President of the Barbados Youth Development Council. Thank you for joining us. So, few things. We have an exercise going on, which is a visual scribe. I don't know if we have some of the photos up here. Okay, that's cool. We started. And then we're going to come back to this later on at the end of the session. But again, since this is a conversation between everyone, we will start with an interactive poll. So basically, what we want to do is we want you to answer a question. And this is based on the Hart's Ladder of Participation, which ranks youth engagement from non-participation to participation. And it has different levels. So the first thing I would want everyone to do is to pick up your phone. Everyone pick up their phones and go to menti.com. And that's how you're gonna log into the question, which is you see up here. In your opinion, what is the current stage of youth participation? So again, go to menti.com and then you have to enter a code, which is, I don't know if you can see it on the screen, it's all the way up there, but it's 99409443. So again, for those who can't see it on the screen, it's 99409443. And we are already getting answers. Oh wow, that's many answers. That's great. So we have different levels, as you see on the screen. We have tokenism, we have youth informed, we have youth consulted, we have shared decision with youth, we have youth and adult initiated, and we have youth initiated and directed. Okay, so maybe while the answers are coming in, Caleb, maybe I can start with you. What do you think of the results? Are you surprised?
Well, first and first, thank you very much for inviting me to speak briefly and to be in the presence of change makers of the world. Looking at the results, I see in terms of tokenism, tokenism is coming in rather high, and following that is youth informed. Close is youth consulted, but what we should have been seeing is that of youth initiated and directed. And it paints a bigger picture of how young people view youth engagement with the United Nations. As the Secretary General rightfully said in one of his speeches, in relation to that, this system here was built by our grandparents. And how therefore can it really better impact us as young people and that of our grandchildren? And what really needs to happen is that there needs to the system needs to be updated, and the system needs to be able to better cater for us now in 2024 as young people and beyond.
Yeah, so the system needs to be updated. And then for you, what does the Pact of the Summit of the Future means to you? The Pact of the Future and the Summit of the Future, what does it mean for you?
The path for the future, which essentially brings us here, all of us here, for the Summit to the Future. What it means for me is that of a mere agreement. And agreements on top of agreements we have seen come out of these hollow walls. Agreements on top of agreements. But what we need now is action. How can we achieve action? And I'd like to commend the work of His Excellency the Secretary General in establishing the Youth Affairs and having that of the Assistant Secretary General, because it is forward thinking, and I believe that we have to give a round of applause. You have been doing excellent work. But we need to go further. How can we go further? There's already established the UN Youth Office, and what needs to happen is that it needs to be decentralized. Establishing UN Youth Offices around the world and already established multi-country offices so that the UN can play a better role in terms of ensuring what the part of the future in Chapter 4, which looks at youth engagement, can be really achieved, and so that there can be a better life for young people around the world. We must hold our governments accountable. We must keep our government's feet to the fire to ensure that that part of the future in relation to Chapter 4 is really actualized and realized for young people around the world. That is how we would turn this mere agreement, Chapter 4 and the Pact for the Future, into action.
Into action. That's the key word today and moving forward, right? Thank you so much, Caleb. Daphne, we've seen a lot of developments when it comes to youth engagements. We've seen more mechanisms, more processes for youth engagement within the UN system, or also generally speaking. But do you think there is still obstacles when it comes to meaningful and equal youth engagement and participation?
Definitely. And again, as Kayla mentioned, I am so excited and grateful to be part of this conversation. But I don't think the question is necessarily if there are obstacles. It's more, what are the obstacles and how can we remove them? So much so that, as we saw in the Mentimeter poll, the highest ranking selection was tokenism. And the most sort of insidious thing about tokenism is that our stories get to be shared with others, but they don't actually inform action going forward. Our voices occupy rooms, but then they fall on silent ears. And truly, it's time for the people who do so much of the talking to do less of the talking, and for the people who don't get to do as much of that talking to take center stage and to have the voices of my generation, the generation that has fueled the Summit of the Future, that has fueled the UN Youth Office to lead. I think we have to also talk about the fact that not only is the UN an entity that many young people don't feel connected to, but when trying to achieve positions of employment or positions of engagement within the UN, there are so many barriers in terms of educational obstacles, language obstacles, and things of that nature when it comes to the criteria for what is required for UN employees and getting young people into the forum of the UN. It is so few and far between. I also did want to take a second to say some words in Spanish. I am a climate organizer, and the background of my work is really highlighting the injustices that marginalized communities face, especially in the global south, and especially as a visibly disabled Latina woman. Jóvenes en países.
Young people in countries of Latin America and the global south have always been fighting. But we are, some of us, giving up our lives in order to do this, and this should not be the case. Fighting for our planet should not be something that is prohibited. It should be something that we do happily together with our community.
What I said a little bit. So many young people, especially in the global south, are losing their lives trying to defend our planet, trying to fight for a better future. And simply, it should not be controversial to defend and fight for our planet. Thank you. We need to expand the enforcement of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. We need to make sure that young people's voices are protected in that declaration. And unless that changes, what you see reflected in that poll is going to stay exactly the same. Tokenism is going to continue to be at the top, and youth engagement is not going to be fully realized.
Yeah. And yeah, she deserves a round of applause, for sure. And then, Daphne, in your opinion, have you seen gaps in the lead up to the Summit of the Future when it comes to youth engagement?
I think that in creating Chapter 4 and creating our sort of guidelines and conventions, it was more youth influenced and less youth led. In terms of, we've compiled things from, the Major Group for Youth and Children, we've compiled things from member states and the young people from member states, but it was less allowing youth to really build brick by brick what Chapter 4 should look like. And I think that we really need to push the boundaries of our ideas of reverse mentorship, where it's not adults only teaching young people, but having adults understand that they can learn from us as well. And how can we open those pathways so that it isn't a hierarchical relationship, but it is a symbiotic relationship where we can continuously share our ideas with one another. And as we gather here today for the first Summit of the Future, I want there to be many summits of the future, but also work that happens outside of these summits in UN offices in member states, in places of community, because that's really where the power happens.
100% agreed. So, Mr. Secretary General, if I would refer again to the UN Charter, where it says, "We the peoples of the United Nations," and I must say I'm fascinated by this sentence, although, you know, it's been there since the establishment of the UN, and I'm fascinated by it because I find it very interesting that it says, "We the peoples of the United Nations." It doesn't necessarily say, "We the governments of the world." This doesn't say, "We the people representing the other people." It really says, "We the people." So for me, it sounds that it really centers us as a collective of individuals. And when it comes to youth participation and youth engagement, we've seen the results. We've heard from Caleb, we've heard from Daphne. In your opinion, what are the concrete steps and reforms that the UN should undertake to really ensure that we are centering the sentence, "We the peoples," which include we the young people of the world?
Well, thank you very much for your question. I think one needs to look into the history. In the beginning, when I was quite young, the attitude of political leaders, but also of organizations like the UN in relation to the youth was grow up.
Yeah.
No, and
True.
there was no interest at all to have a discussion with young people.
True.
Then there was this idea that, I mean, young people is relevant, so we better try to make sure that young people does what we would like them to do. Let's not forget that facing this attitude of rejection, young people revolted. May 68, remember, I'm talking about my young people's time.
Yeah.
And so people started at these organizations to talk to young people, to try to communicate things to young people. Not to listen to young people, but to tell things to young people, to try to convince young people to do this or to do that or to. Then we discovered that that wouldn't lead anywhere. Young people became more and more assertive. And so the third stage in which we are now is a stage in which there is a growing interest and the creation of some mechanisms to listen to young people. And there is a lot yet to be done. I think what this demonstrated is that we are somewhere in the development of this phase, listening to young people. Not listening systematically, not listening in an organized way always, but starting to listen. But what we need is the fourth phase. And the fourth phase is to have young people participating in decision-making processes. And that is what requires a number of reforms. And let's be clear, that is something that is not easy in an organization like the UN, that is still, even if it is with the peoples, an intergovernmental organization. And so, a central aspect of the Summit of the Future and the central aspect of the reforms you talk about is how can we guarantee that the civil society, how can we guarantee that cities and the local authorities, and especially how can we guarantee that young people participate in the different processes of decision of the UN. Now, this is the task that our office now has to engage very strongly, which means looking into how the bodies of the UN work, General Assembly, how does the Economic and Social Council work. Security Council will be more difficult.
Okay.
We need to find ways in which, with the office totally committed to that, to make sure that in the decision-making processes of these bodies, there are moments in which there is an active intervention of young people. Not only that there is a consultation of young people, but moments of active intervention of young people. As we need to have moments of active intervention of the civil society, and as we need to have in some aspects moments of active intervention of the regional and local authorities that know better than governments at national level what's really happening with we the peoples on the ground. Now, these are the reforms that we intend to accelerate now, and it means discussing with the leaders of the different bodies how to make sure that in the work of each of the bodies there are moments in the different processes in which the young people has a systemic participation and not one like those that are there in that picture. And we are totally committed to do it.
Yeah.
But there is another thing that is essential, is to have more young people working inside the organization. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, many organizations in the world, and the UN is one of them, for different reasons, but especially for budgetary constraints, tend to have an aging population. And one of our objectives is to reverse that trend. We need to have much more young people working daily, there where the dossiers are prepared, there where the decisions are studied, there where the ideas are born, to make sure that the kind of product that comes from the different areas and departments of the organization is much more adapted to the needs and to the interests of young people than what it is the case today. So, two main objectives. Organize the processes of the bodies of the UN to give young people a clear interfering voice in decisive moments when things are being decided, not when things have already happened. And second, make a huge effort, with all the budgetary difficulties that we have, a huge effort to reverse the trend of the aging nature of the UN staff.
And in the spirit that this is a honest conversation and a frank conversation, do you think this would be enough to move and change this from moments to lasting moments?
We need to persevere.
Yes.
We will face many resistances. So, if we want to have a lasting moment, we must be determined to overcome the obstacle. The obstacles will appear, but we must be determined to overcome these obstacles. And there is a fundamental reason for that. I mean, look at the world today. We have to recognize that my generation messed up in relation to the world today. There was a critical moment. I was at the time in government.
Yes.
In the 90s. We had the end of the Cold War. We had globalization that appeared to be the solution of all problems. And there was a sense that the world was moving in the right direction, and the generation that was in charge did nothing to correct the negative aspects that were going to appear. And then we saw that globalization indeed produced richness, but it produced inequality. And then we saw that the end of the Cold War meant a multiplication of hot wars.
Yes.
And we see them now everywhere in the world. And then we discovered that the economic model that was in place had forgotten that there is nature, had forgotten that there is planet, and started to use resources that were limited and started to have an impact of destruction of the planet itself. So this is the product of the model that my generation put in place, taking profit of the end of the Cold War and of the globalization and its enormous potential, instead of transforming it in a world of peace and in a world of prosperity for everybody, and in a world with peace with nature, developed a world of multiplication of armed conflicts, a world in which we have war with nature, and a world in which we have an enormous increase of inequality that, of course, makes the situation of the youth in large parts of the world absolutely dramatic. Now, if my generation recognizes that we failed and that we need to revert things and that we need a new model that takes place of the enormous potential of new technologies, that takes place of the enormous energy that has been generated in the world, makes peace with nature, creates true mechanisms of participation and equality at global level, and overcomes the contradictions that lead to the conflicts of today, for that we need a new generation, a digital generation. I'm still an analogic, a digital generation that is able to understand that we are leading to a disaster and that is able to revert things and take profit of the enormous potential that exists in the world to build something in which the next generation will feel comfortable. And we cannot do that if your generation is not part of the decision-making process that is still controlled by my generation that messed up in the way it has happened. You said you wanted a frank conversation.
Yes. Did I expect that? No. But thank you so much, because I know you'll have to deal with this. Daphne, I saw you nodding your head a lot. What were you thinking?
It's very rare where the generation before ours takes responsibility for the harms that has been caused. And I'm 26 years old. Sometimes I just want to be 26 years old. I don't want to have to fix the climate crisis. I don't want to have to stop wars. I just want to watch Netflix.
We all do.
I just want to pet my dog and eat some cookies and live my life. But unfortunately, that is not our reality. But it can be. It can be if we not necessarily push for intergenerational collaboration, but make that the standard, where it isn't one young person representing millions of young people. I cannot possibly speak for a young person in Kenya, speak for a young person going through genocide in Palestine, speak for a young person, thank you, in Australia. I can only speak for me, and I can only share my story. But the more of us that we have, and the more of our stories that get shared, that is where the true change happens.
100%.
So I hope that more of the older generation can follow the SG's example and take responsibility and
100%.
say, okay, we understand and we're ready to do the hard work, because it's going to take a lot.
Thank you, Daphne, for this. Caleb, just in a sentence, what were your thoughts?
My initial thoughts are, wow, and as Daphne said, someone from the generation past taking responsibility for how this generation is now is incredible. I also liked how Daphne also said that he also outlined solutions. And coming from a small and developing state that reaches on the brink of the climate crisis, hurricanes that we've never seen before. You know, as a small developing state, we are not the world's largest emitters, but we face the greatest threats. And that for the SG taking responsibility for what would have transpired years ago is incredible. We know what lies ahead. We know what the mission, and it's for all of us in this room to collectively work to achieve that mission, and its prosperity for all young people.
Amazing. All of us in this room, thank you so much, Caleb. Thank you so much, Daphne. We will continue the conversation with another two amazing young people, Amani and Josefa. So Caleb and Daphne, thank you so much for joining us, and please keep the conversation going. That was very honest, Mr. Secretary General. That was very honest. Thank you for sharing that.
That is simply the truth.
That is simply the truth. Yeah, that deserves a round of applause. That is simply the truth.
You know, there is a book that was published called The Death of Truth.
Yes.
And we see a lot of things being done in misinformation, especially in social media, I mean, to kill the truth.
That's true.
We must make sure that the truth survives.
And is heard.
Truth wins.
Thank you so much. Josefa, thank you so much for joining us. You are an indigenous youth policy coordinator of the Global Youth Biodiversity Network. Amani, thank you so much for joining us, the co-founder of at Unleashed Potentials in Motion. So, Josefa, if I would start with you. In your opinion, what are the strategies that can be used and deployed today to ensure a meaningful youth participation in the decision-making processes, also taking into account what the SG has shared?
Thank you so much. And I absolutely agree. Because among the young people, I just really want to emphasize that there are among them indigenous youth with disabilities, young refugees who are marginalized. And I think that unless our systems, our institutions, our decision-making processes, unless those work for them, and unless they listen to them and are led by them, then I think we would not only be failing at leaving no one behind, we would also be failing at listening to the voices and values and lived experiences that are very central to really healing the world that we live in. And I really say this also as an indigenous young woman who is constantly being shaped and molded by the young people, the indigenous people that I interact with every day, at home and in the work that I do. These are people who really continue to be caring for each other, caring for the land, caring for nature, and remain compassionate and kind, even as they fight a system that is harming them and oppressing them and even killing them. So unless our institutions and processes are being led by them, then we would be failing at what we need to do, really. And just to add, I think what we need then is a shift, really, the shift in who holds power and space to speak and to lead, a shift in who gets resources, a shift in whose expertise we are listening to, and whose values are guiding decision-making. For me, this needs to happen for transformation to really happen if we are sincere about really shifting and changing the system.
That's very well put, especially if we are sincere, and I hope everyone here is sincere about making that shift. Amani, what are some of the examples of innovative approaches that youth utilize in tackling the global challenges?
Thank you so much for the question and for the opportunity to speak. First of all, we have mentioned a lot of challenges, and I know the world is currently facing a lot of them. You mentioned about innovation. Innovation is one way that we can assure a better future. But this innovation should be innovation for good. There are a lot of challenges, and all these challenges can be really solved if we are to change the way we are doing things for better. I will share briefly about my story. I am a displaced person for the last 16 years. I've been living in Uganda as a forcibly displaced person from the Democratic Republic of Congo. My life has been with a lot of adversities, but also great choices to make the world a better place. In 2018, I co-founded a youth-led organization called Unleashed Potentials in Motion, where we empower young people in leadership, potential discovery, business development, and social entrepreneurship. And we have seen how this innovation can support young people to realize their future goals, because for anyone who has experienced a displacement, you know how it comes with traumas, having left your home behind, having left your story behind, some of your family members. So, and right now we have over 120 displaced people, 20 million displaced people. And it is such a huge it's such a huge opportunity that we have to tap in their talents, their skills, without leaving anyone behind. One of the youth that we trained called Pasia Baraka. Let me finalize with this little story. Pasia left his home in 2016. He tried to join school, but failed because of language barrier and lack of scholarship opportunities. He learned that Unleashed had opened up its doors. He applied quickly, and then he gained a scholarship at the organization. He started through mentorship, he made research and realized that in the settlement, malaria was killing quite a big number of young people. So he thought, which innovation could I create to reduce on the risk of this problem? He realized that he could use organic materials found in the settlement, in the community, to make a mosquito repellent jelly. Pasia made the mosquito repellent jelly that is currently solving big challenges, and he's supporting quite a number of young people to get jobs through his innovation. Now, this is one of the many innovations that young people are making. Like in this room, there are quite a lot of bright minds that are having a lot of innovations that they are creating to solve the challenge that face our world today. When youth are empowered, trusted, and funded, major breakthroughs that will shape our world to solve the challenges of today and the challenges of tomorrow is a guarantee. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Caleb. Mr. Secretary General, we heard Josefa. She talked about the shift and the need for a genuine shift, right? A genuine shift, a genuine interest in making the shift for meaningful and equal youth participation. And Amani shared with us his story and also made a very incredible remark about, the need to have youth empowered, trusted, and funded. What are your thoughts on this?
I believe that one of the things that is essential at country level, as in international organizations, is to unleash the potential of young people. I mean, things are organized in a way in which, to a certain extent, young people has no opportunity to develop their own capacities and to be able to have an active engagement and contribution to the society as a whole. So one of the key reforms that need to be done, that need to be implemented at all levels, is to free the young people, to let young people strive, to let the potential of young people be multiplied. And what we see today, if one thinks about how technology is evolving, this is a need even for the future economy. The future economy requires a level of youth in the capacity to understand the new technologies and to use the new technologies, that it's absolutely essential to create the space, create the environment in which young people can assume leadership in their lives, in their activities, and more in the lives and activities of the community. This is, I think, the main objective of my generation, is to let the next generation be able to take the power that we are still misusing.
Wow. Is that a commitment? Is that a commitment? Is that a commitment?
Yes, it is.
Yes.
But I mean, let's be clear. Power is never given. Power is taken, which means young people need to have a exigent approach to their participation in countries, in organizations, in the life of our planet. So I encourage young people not to be afraid to fight for their rights.
Power is never given, it's taken. That's quite a statement of inspiration for young people to continue the determination. There's two words that you said that sparked a thought for me. Unleash and free. And in the spirit that this is a conversation among all of us, as I said, it's not only the four of us here on stage with the other two young colleagues, but this is a conversation among all of us. I would want us to try to unleash our creativity and our imagination and free our minds a bit. I know we've been having discussions, we've been discussing challenges here, we've been discussing strategies, gaps, and so on. But we also want to have a moment to think, to reflect, and to imagine a little bit. So the first thing I'll ask everyone is to make sure that you're sitting comfortably in your chairs, you know. Just sit comfortably and think a little bit about the future, about the world we want to live in. Maybe take a deep breath. Maybe another deep breath. And if you feel comfortable, close your eyes. If you don't, just try to think and connect with yourself a little bit. And while we do that, I want you to think and imagine two different worlds. One world where nothing changes, no reforms are done to ensure youth meaningful participation, a world where everyone goes business as usual, and a world where the status quo right now, where young people do not have the power to influence or to participate. That's the first world. Now, I want you to imagine a second world where we adopt transformative change, where young people are able to unleash their power, unleash their potential, where young people can be free to participate and able to influence the decision-making processes. So maybe just take another deep breath and think about these two different worlds. Just for a second, imagine how they look like. And then now we have created two different worlds. And my question to you, Josefa, if I can start with you. Which world would you want to live in? Which one would you want your future, the future generation to live in? And what stood out for you about that world?
So of course, it's the one where transformation really happens. And I'll share two aspects that are really personal to me. First is in this future, children and young people are not afraid of the future that's facing them and don't have to fight as hard as we're fighting now. Even as we speak, there is a big climate march going on outside these halls who are calling to stop funding extractivism and the climate crisis, right? So one where children and young people are not afraid of the future. And the second aspect is thinking of my family at home in the Philippines, who are, because my father is an environmental defender and he's facing a difficult situation with criminalization. And so in this world that I envision in the future, I really hope that environmental defenders are safe and fully protected.
Thank you so much. And Amani, what about you? And what action do we need to take for that world, or maybe not take?
More than ever, young people are more than committed to create change in their communities. We want to bring our energy, our talents, and our skills. One action that could be taken to achieve a world where we are able to solve challenges that we face at this moment and for the future to come, we could create a youth empowerment fund that supports initiatives that are solving challenges in climatic action, social justice, and innovation. Because this way we can indeed be able to project the future and see a light, to project the future and want to be there, not a world where we don't want to be. And I was talking to someone yesterday who mentioned that at times when they look into the future, they feel like they do not want to be into that future. And it is us, it is one by one to take action. Like the Secretary General mentioned, the seat is not given, it is taken. So it is for every individual to take their actions in whichever way possible that they can to create that change and to have that world. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Caleb. Now, I have the same question to the audience. So raise your hand if you want to be in World 1. There is one hand over there. There is another hand. Was that a third hand? No? Okay. And raise your hand if you want to be in World 2. That's many hands, more than what I can count. Mr. Secretary General, which world would you want to be in?
It's not a matter of wanting to be, it's a matter of building it. We need to build number 2. What is number 1? Number 1 means the temperature will rise to 2.5 to 3 degrees. It means that we will have devastating impacts caused by high level sea rise, by storms, drought, by all kinds of natural phenomena. There will be no more glaciers, there will be no more corals. Biodiversity will be largely eliminated. Is this the world where we want to live? Of course, a few people will live well in this world. There will be a group of privileged people, because inequalities will grow, that will live in a kind of a air conditioning igloo, and go on enjoying the good things of life. But the overwhelming majority of the population of the world will be in big trouble. And then it will be the world in which the enormous potential of the technologies that we are developing, especially artificial intelligence, will be in the hands of a small group of great companies, and the capacity of transforming this world in a world in which human agency will be less and less relevant. in which we will be controlled by a system that we don't even understand, where we will not even be able to know what is true and what is false. This is the world that will be world number one. But world number two is possible. We can fight climate change now. We can reduce the emissions drastically in this decade. And we can guarantee that we stick to the 1.5 degrees. And that the peace with nature is reestablished in the world and biodiversity is preserved. And the experience of indigenous communities demonstrates that it is possible. And on the other hand, we can use artificial intelligence to make it a fantastic instrument of development in a way that is much more fair, with much less inequality in the world, because it's something that, with adequate investment in literacy, with adequate investment in the youth will be able to use it everywhere. So, I mean, the world number two is a world that will respond to the dramatic challenges that the world number one is creating. Destruction of nature with climate change, reversed by a world in which we all can live normally.
Indeed.
Technology to divide, technology to unite. And then one thing that is very important that was said. We see more and more young people today with a lot of anxiety about the future. We have a serious mental health problem developing in the world today because of this perception that we are going in the wrong direction and that the world is becoming more and more difficult and more dangerous. That is why it is absolutely essential to go to model number two.
Model number two, world number two is possible, and I really like how you challenged me on my question, that it's not the world we want to live in, but which one we can build. And that's something that we will continue discussing today, especially in the sessions. Now, after this session, we're going to have a half an hour break, and then there are 3 sessions that are focused on inclusion, equity, and trust, which I think are essential to build world number two. Before we close, in the beginning, we saw the visual that was shown on the screen, and maybe now we can take a look at it. That's such an amazing visual, I must say, and it captures very well this honest and frank conversation. Thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you Josefa, thank you Secretary General, thank you Amani, and I hope this is a conversation that will continue. Thank you so much everyone.